Has that come up? Perfect.
Yeah.
So I think I've had one-to-ones with most of you, but for those who don't know, I'm Nick and I'm a financial planner. I'm a self-employed financial planner working with Smith Elliott Financial Management. And just very quickly, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, my background. So that's me and my wife, Kirsty, when we got married 4 years ago in Scotland. So I met my wife the first weekend I moved up to Scotland with the Navy. So she's from Glasgow and she's an ex-police officer. So it's safe to say I don't step out of line very often. And then there are my two boys, Theo and Christian, who's 6 weeks old. So if anyone's got any tips on how to get a baby to sleep, I am all ears. So previous to becoming a financial planner, so I went to uni in Edinburgh and drifted around a few different jobs before joining the Royal Navy, and I was a submariner. And that's a picture of the submarine I served on our first deployment. So in total, I spent a year of my life underwater on that thing. And then that is a picture of where I lived at one point for nine weeks on that top bunk. Yeah, pretty grim. Don't miss those conditions at all. And then that's a picture of me there. So basically, you spend 6 months qualifying to become a submariner, because if something happens in a compartment, you need to be there to quickly, hopefully, isolate anything that's happened. And then your rite of passage as a submariner, you get awarded it's a badge called your Dolphins. In that shot of rum, it's about a triple shot of rum, comfortably the worst thing I've ever drunk. And you have to drink the rum and catch the badge in your teeth. So yeah, still remember how bad that tasted. So my why. So when I was younger, I made some horrendous financial decisions that nearly cost me quite badly at one point. And then when I was in the Navy, I started to become interested in just finance in general and what people could do with their money. And it started off looking at buy-to-let properties, and my interest snowballed from there, really. I sort of realized just how bad financial education is and how little people know in general about finance. So I thought I would career change to a job where I could actually have a positive impact on people's long-term financial futures. So today, I wanted to talk about building a financial plan and how a holistic view can pay in the long run. So obviously not to insult anyone's intelligence, but so holistic is looking at everything. Because for me, if someone's dealing with finances, if they're exclusively just looking at your pension or insurance in isolation, I don't think they're probably doing the full job, and it's important to look at everything. So I just want to give you a couple of what ifs just to try and get you thinking. So I'm not going to pick on anyone for any answers here, but just to privately consider them. So this might sound like a ridiculous one, but what if I live too long? So to put this into context, the average person in the UK runs out of money 10 years before they die. So after that, you're solely reliant on state pension and benefits. And added to that, one of the most ridiculous statistics is currently nearly £20 billion of unclaimed pension funds that people have lost over the years, on an average of £13,000 a pot. If you got a scratch card and you won £13,000, you'd be delighted. Yet when it's your pension pot, people forget about it and don't keep track. So the second one, what if I die too soon? So if you had passed away yesterday, what financial situation would you leave behind for your family? For those of you who've got businesses, how's that structured? In terms of your mortgage, what would happen to your family? Could they support themselves if anything happened to you? The third one, what if you can't work? So if you had a long-term illness, how would you support yourself? So if you had a serious illness yesterday, what would happen for the next 6, 12, 24 months if worst case scenario you couldn't work? And then another big one that gets overlooked is if you had a bit morbid, but if you had passed away yesterday, would your estate go to where you want it to go? Have you put any thoughts around that? So HMRC in financial year 1920 received £5.2 billion of inheritance tax, where in actual fact, if utilising someone like Lindsay, one of our members, in conjunction with her, we can put plans in place to help mitigate that, and in some cases reduce the payment of income tax altogether. So for most people in general, this is roughly what your financial lifetime will look like. So initially built up with your accumulation phase, building your wealth, followed by your decumulation in retirement. And that point where it switches from the blue to red, so I call that your financial freedom day. So it's the day you've got enough assets where you no longer have to work. And ultimately that number that everyone needs to reach can be different for everyone, depends on your lifestyle and expenditure. And the date that you reach that is also going to be dictated by the amount of work you put in beforehand in that blue phase. So today I just want to talk you through a very, very basic financial plan. Obviously, it's not going to be, everyone's got different scenarios, so it's not going to be applicable to all of you, but what it's designed to do is hopefully to get you to think about your own circumstances and how the different aspects of financial planning are intertwined, and you shouldn't be looking at things just in isolation. So just to keep it simple, I'm just assuming that the individual we're talking about today is 45 years old, looking to retire at 70, single, with a mortgage and roughly £60,000 a year earnings. So just take the mortgage first of all. So really typical scenario that we see, £250,000 mortgage, 2.5% interest rate over a 25-year term. So from age 45, the mortgage currently is going to finish when they're looking to retire. So in total, with interest added on, the total repayable £336,000. So Martin Lewis from Money Saving Experts, I'm sure most of you have heard of. Something he says quite regularly, with saving rates at rock bottom, so most accounts at the moment are only slightly above 0%. Overpaying on your mortgage for most of us will save tens of thousands of pounds. So when you look at that, so assuming this individual we're talking about has got £500 a month surplus income, if they were to make overpayments of £500 a month on their mortgage, they would save themselves £34,500, and their mortgage would finish 9 years early. But I just want to compare that with perhaps taking a slightly different strategy. So the main one that I see all the time is people very, very focused on their mortgage, which is understandable because it's the biggest debt and it's the things people feel most uncomfortable with. So that extra £500 a month, in this case, we're going to use to overpay on the mortgage and finish the mortgage 9 years early. So in total paying out £1,600 a month. After the mortgage is finished, we're then going to switch the focus to retirement planning, which is what I see most often, where all of a sudden, all of the money they're putting towards paying off the mortgage is then diverted to retirement planning. I'm then going to compare that to if you just kept the mortgage over that 25-year term, and that surplus income of £500 a month, you set aside for your retirement planning for the full 25 years. I'm just going to show you the difference that can make. So scenario one, by investing for that 9-year period without any tax relief, which I'll touch upon later, in their pension pot, they're going to have £234,000, assuming 6% average growth a year, which I'll touch on that in a second. And that's where they've paid off the mortgage early and then 9 years exclusively focused on their retirement planning. You can compare that to the second scenario, where they've constantly just paid the £500 a month for the full 25 years. They've built themselves a retirement pot of £348,000 if you assume average growth of 6%. So if you take away the interest they would have saved on their mortgage, overall, they are still overall nearly £80,000 better off by taking a more balanced approach and not exclusively just focusing on the mortgage. Now, just to show you briefly in terms of that 6%, so I don't want to get massively bogged down on this, but this is a investment portfolio that we regularly use. It's at the lower end of this medium spectrum. However, after charges over the last 5 years, it's averaged 6.5% returns, and over 9 years, 6.7% returns. So just to show you that that 6% that I've just mentioned previously, that's not a figure that's been plucked out of the air. That is reflective of what you could hopefully see, obviously, with the caveat that we can't guarantee future performance, but historically, that's what that's produced. So obviously, adopting this type of strategy is very dependent on investment and people being willing to invest their money for the long term. So I just wanted to touch upon what investment actually is to help try and demystify it, because I'm aware when people hear investment, quite often it makes them nervous, because ultimately you can be invested in all sorts of things, from cryptocurrency, in some cases cars, art, wine. I've heard some horror stories about Nigerian oil schemes, which people are surprised they don't get the money back. So I just want to talk about regulated investments that we deal with, and your pension, if you've got one, will be invested in as well. So ultimately, investment is underpinned by this principle that Albert Einstein spoke about, so compound growth. So compound growth is the 8th wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it, and he who doesn't pays it. So I just want to give a couple of examples of how that actually works. So if you imagine that you had a credit card and you had a balance of £5,000 on it with an interest rate of 27%, which unfortunately isn't that uncommon. Now, if you decided you weren't going to pay that off and you were going to move to Australia, and you were going to stay in Australia for 10 years, or for whatever reason, in 10 years' time, you came back to the UK and you then opened your bank statement, your credit card would now have a balance of £72,000. And that is purely by compound growth. So just to break that down for you, just to show you how it works. So in year one, your £5,000 balance has accrued interest of £1,500. So by the end of the year, your new balance is £6,500. So the following year, you accrue interest on your new balance of £6,500, and that snowballs over the years. And by the 10th year, that's turned into £17,000 of interest, and your balance has now jumped up to £72,000. So that principle is how investment works in effect. It's about allowing your growth to roll up over the years, and the longer it grows and rolls up, the more powerful it becomes. So to give you an example of how that works a bit more positively, so my 6-week-old Christian, so if I wanted to, I could open a pension for him, and I could still benefit from getting tax relief on that. So if I contributed from the day he was born till the age of 10 years old, £5 a day, so we're only contributing for 10 years, you benefit from tax relief, which I'll touch upon later. If you were to leave that money invested and not touch it, assuming 7% growth, by the time he's 68, his pension pot will be worth nearly £1.5 million, just by leaving that sat there and allowing compound growth to slowly take effect over the years. And every 10 to 12 years, what he's got in his pension pot would almost double. Obviously, it's not going to be quite as a straightforward line as that, which I'll come on to later, but that is just how powerful compound growth can be. So just to briefly talk about the poor image, but just to talk about what you can expect to see with this type of investment. This is a regulated investment, and you'll find within your portfolio, you'll have various different asset classes that react slightly differently in different market conditions. So for example, in a downturn, you tend to see bonds perform better. However, equities, shares in businesses, that's where you see growth. That's where you see the most growth. However, that's also the most volatile and where you can see the value of your money jumping around. So I just wanted to just focus on talking about shares, because I find a lot of people say that they don't understand how the financial markets work and how the stock market works. So I just want to try and put some context in behind that. So if you just think about your house and how the value of your house is impacted. So supply and demand. So more people who are trying to buy your house will hopefully push the price up where people are competing for it. Government policy. So if interest rates are dropped or stamp duty holidays, you'll see a lot more interest in property and potentially pushing prices up. If you've improved your property, if you put an extension on your kitchen, your bathroom, hopefully it'll appreciate in value. The area, so if you purchase in a nice area, you're going to hope that it will retain its value and increase over time. But also if you buy your property in an up and coming area, that potentially could accelerate in value a lot quicker. Then ultimately, is your property structurally sound? If an expert looked at it, would they find flaws in your property to make it structurally unsafe that needs work doing? So all of those can impact the value of your property. And in effect, shares in a business work in a similar way. So supply and demand, the more people trying to buy shares in a business, the more it can push the price up. Government policy, so particular sectors could be more attractive depending on what government policy is. If there are innovations that company are coming up with, so a tech company, for example, or Tesla, you could see massive growth, and also could be quite high risk. Geographical location's a big one. So if you bought shares in a country like the US or the UK, it's probably more stable than an area like Brazil or India. But ultimately, in Brazil or India, they're emerging markets, and you could see massive growth in those companies. Then hopefully inflation over time will take effect and slowly increase the value. However, ultimately, what are the foundations of those businesses? Is it financially stable? If an expert looked at it, is that company still going to be here in the long term? So all of those impact the value of a business. So just give you an idea of a few different businesses and how they've performed. So this is Amazon. So if you had bought shares in Amazon in the late 90s, your investment will now be plus 3,000%, now at $3,000 a share. So a company that's grown massively, constantly innovating, coming up with new ideas. Another really interesting one is Zoom. So most of us, I certainly had never heard of Zoom at the beginning of this year and now use it daily. So shares in Zoom have jumped 300% so far this year. However, is that where people are, where they're thinking they're jumping on the next big thing? Or is that a company where actually has got really good long-term prospects and is going to be constantly innovating and growing? And something that is actually really, or I find interesting with Zoom anyway. So all of the shares in issue for a company, when all of their values put together, is called the market capitalization. So the market cap of Zoom is currently worth more than the entire US airline industry altogether, just to show how much growth they've experienced. And now the next company I'm going to show you. So just to make this clear, this is absolutely not a share tip in any way, shape or form. But for those of you who have heard of Carnival Group, Carnival Corporation, sorry, so they're a cruise line industry based in America. So a massive company. And this is where there could potentially be great opportunities in a time like this. So previously they were trading at around about $60 a share, where obviously because of COVID, their business literally can't go anywhere or do anything at the moment. So not surprisingly, investors have sold shares in their business and the price has dropped to $16 a share. However, if that company post-COVID can bounce back when people are traveling again, there could be potential for the value in that company to jump back up to $60 a share, and you could potentially see really quick growth. And they're the sorts of opportunities that professional fund managers will look for. Or on the flip side, for those of you who remember Carillion, government contract business, In 2017, they literally went bust. So a company that was previously trading at £4 a share folded, and any investors would have lost all of their money who were in that company. So just to quickly take you back to Amazon. Now, if you were looking to make an investment, you would need $3,000 to buy one share in Amazon. So for most of us, with the type of wealth we have to deal with, we couldn't buy many shares in Amazon, and all of our money is going to be massively focused on the fortunes of one business. So basically, what we do, we pool our money with a lot of other investors and use professional fund managers. So these guys will be looking for the best long-term investments, the best companies with what they hope are going to have really good long-term prospects and long-term growth. And that allows you to be a lot more diversified. So for example, this is a portfolio we use, and that is made up of 11 different investment funds, each specializing in different areas, different assets, and each fund could potentially be invested in hundreds of different businesses. So you're completely diversifying your risk. So you're not going to be massively focused having your investment in one business or one company like an Amazon. In addition, you're spread geographically. So if you just look there. So for example, a lot of people are worrying about Brexit again. Well, that portfolio's only got 2.7% invested in UK equities. So actually the impact of Brexit, positive or negatively, will not have a detrimental impact to that particular investment. And hopefully it means isolated incidents in economies you're not going to feel the impact of. So the big thing with investment is people worry, not surprisingly, massively about where the financial markets are going to go, because as you'll see in the headlines, especially recently, they're absolutely all over the place. So without getting massively bogged down in this is just designed to show you, if you had £100,000 invested in different assets since 1987 to 2019, what's happened? But really the point of this is to demonstrate that actually, over the long term, if you've held on, you've seen massive growth. Roughly every 10 to 12 years, that investment's doubled. And then probably most importantly, if you look at, so that one there, so 2008 is the last big crash that everyone, obviously pre-COVID, remembers. It actually only took financial markets 12 months to return to previous levels. And then if you look at the growth that they've experienced since, it's been absolutely enormous. Obviously, COVID has had a massive impact recently, which this doesn't show. However, most investment funds only took around about 4 months to recover to previous COVID levels. So holding on to the long term is the strategy that you have to focus on when you're looking to grow your wealth for the long term. And fundamentally, this is what it boils down to. Over 5 days, I can absolutely guarantee that's what you're going to see. And over 5 days, it is absolutely speculation as to what will happen. No one knows what's going to happen in 5 days. For example, if we saw a massive jump because of the announcement of a vaccine, there could be a new announcement that comes out in a couple of days' time that could potentially see markets fall. However, over the long term, what you'd hope to see is on the left-hand side, long-term growth. And that's what you have to focus on. This is when you're working towards like your long-term goals and retirement planning, this is your get rich slow scheme. So I obviously hope everyone in here has really successful businesses and you can sell them for a 6 or 7 figure sum. However, this is your fallback of knowing that you are going to be okay in retirement. So obviously there's different investments you can choose, different risk attitudes, but after you've picked your investment, the next biggest decision you need to choose is basically the wrapper that you put that investment in. With financial planning, there's a couple of cornerstones that you'll always hear financial planners talk about. So the first one, stocks and shares ISA. So this is purely a vehicle to hold your investment, and different wrappers basically have different benefits. So a stocks and shares ISA, you can invest up to £20,000 a year, can be invested in a wide variety of different things. But most importantly, it grows tax-free It can be withdrawn tax-free, and it can be withdrawn at any age, which gives you massive flexibility. However, there's another wrapper which also is massively important. So for most people, if I offered an opportunity of guaranteed 20% investment returns, most people would be really, really excited about that and would absolutely bite my arm off. However, as soon as you say pension, people immediately switch off and find it boring. However, a pension has massive, massive benefits. So depending on a few different factors, you can contribute up to £40,000 a year into your pension. You can hold up to £1 million in your pension currently. You can hold more, but there's tax implications. However, importantly, it grows tax-free within your pension. And a massive factor is it's considered outside of your estate for inheritance tax. And with current rules, it can be withdrawn from age 55. So most people, for some reason, think it's 65 it can be withdrawn from. It's actually 55 currently. However, over the next 10 years, that's due to increase to age 58. And again, something a lot of people don't know with new legislation that came in 2015, you can access it flexibly. And in a nutshell, that basically means you can treat your pension like a big current account. So you can make withdrawals as and when you see fit. The only caveat to that is there may be tax implications. However, obviously I mentioned a few times the tax relief, which is a massive, massive benefit of pensions. So I just want to touch upon that and just explain how that works. So a basic rate taxpayer, if you had a direct debit of £400 a month leaving your bank account, before it reaches your pension, the government will add on £100 of tax relief automatically. So what is paid into your pension is £500. So you're literally getting £100 for free added into your pension. If you're a higher rate taxpayer, then it's even better. It's applied slightly differently. However, in a nutshell, it costs you £300 to make that same £500 contribution. So you get £100 basic rate tax relief. However, you also get higher rate tax relief, which is applied slightly differently, which I'll show you. However, that contribution is actually only cost you £300. So with the higher rate tax relief, this is how it's applied. So your tax bands are adjusted basically. So on the left-hand side is how your tax bands are normally. However, this individual has paid in £4,800 into his pension from his bank account. So as a result, this has changed from £50,000 to £54,800. So you've increased your 20% tax band, so you're saving on tax that way. So still receiving a similar benefit, but just applied differently for higher rate. In addition, your taxable income for this individual will be reduced by £4,800. So if I'm aware quite a few of you will be limited company owners. So in that case, you still have massive benefits for pensions, but it's just applied slightly differently. So this would work for sole traders, for example. And for a limited company, so your profits, you'll have your corporation tax, you then pay national insurance, you'll then draw out your income, and most likely you'll pay tax in the form of dividends. You contribute into a pension, however, it comes out before all of that. So you're missing out on losing 19% corporation tax, 13.8 national insurance, and then dividends, which hopefully, you could be potentially 32.5 or even 38. So just going back to our financial plan with this individual and just talking about how we have allocated his funds. So just for simplicity, for the 25 years, we've paid £250 into his ISA and £250 into his pension for 25 years. Assuming 6% growth, the pension has had tax relief. So as a result, the pension is £217,000 now when they come to retire at age 70, and their ISA sat at £174,000. And that's been projected using cash flow modelling. So what does that actually mean? So this is this individual's cash flow model. So this is showing his income. Basically, blue is good. Blue means that he has income to support himself, and he can afford to support himself in retirement, maintaining the same standard of living all the way through to age 100 without having to worry. Now, something that gets massively, massively overlooked is the what ifs. So what if at age 55, this individual was ill and couldn't work for 2 years? So basically, with this cash flow model, red is bad. Red means that they have no income. So at age 55, say they had a heart attack, they're off work for 2 years. So what this light blue bar is showing here is they've had to draw upon their ISA to be able to fund their lifestyle. The red means they've literally had no income, nothing to support themselves with. Now, assuming that after the 2 years, they can walk back into work, they can pick up where they left off, same income, and continue their contributions as they were previously, they've kept their house. Even by that, at age 70, their ISA is going to be £60,000 and their pension £200,000. However, what you can see down here at the end, that red, by age 80, they've run out of money. And now they're exclusively reliant on this blue bar here, which is their state pension. So a massive, massive thing. And this is something that is completely overlooked, and people think insurance is a waste of money and people don't like to pay for it. However, just to give you an example that I've seen this year with actually some colleagues of mine. So a couple in this office, so he's a financial advisor and she's a mortgage advisor. They've got 4 children and they're both aged 35 and 34. This summer she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. So they've caught it early and she's looking like she's going to make a full recovery, which is great news. However, she's not been able to work, so her income has been 0. He's obviously been massively distracted, looking after her, making sure she recovers, taking her to hospital, looking after the children. His income has been impacted massively. However, they had insurance in place, so they've not had to worry about the fall in income, and it allows her to make a full recovery without having to stress about money, and they know they're still going to have a roof over their head and still be able to afford their bills and to eat. So just to give you a few facts about insurance, because this is something which I think is absolutely massively important. So this was a protection survey done in 2018. So 14% of the over 55s said they've been unable to work for over 6 months at some point during their career. So if you just think about yourself, how would that impact you if that happened to you? In general, people overestimate the cost of income protection by 27%. And something that I find even more mind-blowing, especially for self-employed, is only 9.4% have income protection. So for self-employed, there's no sick pay. There's statutory sick pay, but you're obviously not going to get sick pay like an employed individual would, whereas in some cases they can have a package of 6 to 12 months. You will literally get nothing. How would you support yourself if you were off work, long-term sick? And another massive one, 1 in 6 people said if they passed away, their family would have to sell the home. So if they left children or a spouse, they would have to sell the family home. They wouldn't be able to afford to stay in it. And in some cases, life insurance would be as little as £10 a month. And people would rather not pay that and risk that happening and your family having to move out your house. And then just the last one was more people insure their cars, pets and phones than themselves. So obviously cars is a compulsory one, I appreciate that, but people deem their pets and phones more important than themselves who are going out and earning money. So again, what would happen if you were off work and you couldn't earn money? What would happen to your phone? I'd imagine insuring for dropping it's going to be the least of your worries. So basically, in summary, all of these different aspects are massively, massively important to a financial plan. And if you are only worrying about one particular thing, then for me, your plan's built on quicksand, because if something happened that you weren't expecting, then all of that good work that you have done for all of those years, so the plan that we've built, that basic plan we built there, that individual was saving for 10 years, and yet everything was wiped out with 2 years of sickness. All of these things are massively intertwined, which is the point I really wanted to get across today. Yeah, does anyone have any questions?
Well done, Nick. That was really good. There was some definitely ha-ha moments in there for me. And my husband's just walked behind me, and you can see him, and he was like, "Ooh, I need to listen to this. Can I listen to this recording?" I was like, "No, you're not a member." I've got a question, but actually, has anyone else got any questions before I ask mine, rather than being greedy? Questions, anyone?
I've got one. I've got one actually.
Yep.
Nick, obviously with contributing to a pension, that's on the premise of a pension date. If that makes sense, i.e., a year or an age at which you may want to start calling that income, basically.
Yep.
How would you balance that between the fact that maybe it would be good to have a residual income before somebody, i.e. me, turns 70? So we're trying to invest to get money sooner than 70. I mean, I don't want to retire when I'm 55, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. So, and that ultimately is the big question, and where working together comes into it, because obviously people have different goals. So I've just seen Sue's question. I know she's about to pop off. So the state retirement age is going to be increasing to 68, and it depends on your date of birth. And you can go on the Gov website and you can put in your date of birth, and they'll give you your state retirement age. Sorry, Matt. So yeah, ultimately that's about balance, because ultimately it is about living for the here and now and enjoying your life now. It's about balancing having funds that are maybe invested, but if worst case something happened, are still accessible, and also planning for retirement. And basically the earlier you start with those plans, the easier it is, because the contributions need to be less. So the impact of you starting later means all of a sudden what you have to contribute jumps up massively. So yeah, it's basically, so start your plan early. Also circumstances will change as well. So if you've got children, they're going to move out. So later on, hopefully you will be able to contribute more towards these goals. But yeah, the point is more, the earlier you think about it, the earlier it is.
So it sounds like you're almost saying it's two strategies really. You have a pension strategy and then maybe an investment strategy or something.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah, cool.
Massively. And you know, and ultimately depending on your incomes, you can contribute more, a lump sum into a pension later on, to benefit from tax relief. So if you had funds sat there that later on you actually didn't need access to, you can make a lump sum contribution into your pension if you're comfortable to lose access to those funds. So yeah, it is massively about finding that happy medium of the here and now, planning for the future, and also that's an ever-changing plan as well, because circumstances change, incomes change, life circumstances change. So yeah, it's just about balancing it.
You know, when you've just said you can put a lump sum into your pension, but then obviously you know that you can't get it, but can't you now draw down on your pension with the new regulations? So you could get it if you needed to, or it just means does it just mean you're penalised, or?
So it's restricted by age. So currently you can't access it until age 55. And over the next 10 years, that's going to increase to age 58. Okay. So you literally can't access it until those. There are a few quirks if you're a business owner where you can, there's a type of pension you can put it into where you could take a loan against it to be able to use those funds towards your business, but that's a bit of a different, a lot more technicalities around that. So yeah, fundamentally you can't touch your pension until your 50s.
If I can add on to that, because it's if you've got a pension pot, there's certain, I don't want to get too technical, but there's certain restrictions on what you may be able to do. I know, as a business owner, commercial property, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
Individual, can you, I mean, it's just come to me, but could you potentially withdraw your money to invest in a holiday home that would be let out?
You can do, yeah. You can. Ultimately, so basically, when you reach the normal retirement age, is called, so state pension age and normal retirement age. So state pension age is when you get your state pension. Normal retirement age is when you can draw upon your pension. If you wanted to, you could draw out your entire pension in one massive lump sum if you wanted to. Obviously, there's massive tax implications with that, and how you're actually going to afford to live in retirement. But if you were to do that, you're free to do whatever you want with that money. It's yours. And then obviously it's about, just making sure that that's the right decision for you, basically.
Cool.
Okay, great. Has anyone else got any questions? I've seen one in the box actually from Matthew. Can you cover the misconceptions around, is that state pension age and retirement age?
Okay, yeah. So state pension is, so your national insurance contributions will build up your entitlement to a state pension. So currently that's just over £9,000 a year you're entitled to, due to increase with inflation. Depending on your age, you'll be able to access that at different times. It's due to increase to age 68. So for me, by the time I can draw on it, I'll need to be 68 years old to get your state pension. There's a government website which, if you put in your date of birth, it'll tell you exactly the age that you can draw upon your state pension. And basically, you need 35 years national insurance contributions to get the full state pension. So that's the state pension. In terms of your own personal pension pot, currently you can draw on that at age 55. That age is slowly going to increase to basically match, it's going to be 10 years behind the state pension age. So over the next 10 years, it's going to be age 58, you can access your personal pension. So 10 years before your state retirement.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry, I was just...
Go on, Jo.
I was just going to say, I mean, I endorse everything that Nick's saying. I was very fortunate, and so was my husband, in that we grew up in very financially literate households. My parents started investing in the stock exchange and pensions in the 1950s. And in fact, when my mum died 2 years ago, I've inherited stocks and shares that were parts of their original investment portfolios. One of the things that I see, I mean, my husband's retired at 60, he's not touching his pensions yet. And I, frankly, could do the same, but I love what I do. One of the things that I've said to my daughters, Nick, and I don't know how you feel about this, is that, frankly, they're in their 30s. There may probably not even be a state pension by the time they get to a pension age, firstly. So they're both been investing in pensions for some time. But secondly, I mean, the thing I would say to anybody is look at how much the state pension is if you don't know. And trust me, I see people, older people, trying to manage on state pensions, and it is a miserable existence, quite frankly. So, you know, if you're having 3 holidays a year and saying, I can't put anything into investments in pensions, I would highly recommend you at least drop one holiday and start putting stuff into investments and pensions. And if you're not comfortable, go to someone like Nick. I mean, I know we've got others, but I've spoken to Nick. He's very knowledgeable about all this. But that's just my word of warning when I'm dealing with some of the families that I'm dealing with as well.
Yeah, it's so the state pension's a great tool in planning, and it gives a great foundation. So for a lot of people, it'll hopefully cover your household bills for the year. However, that's it. For most people, they can't afford to do anything else apart from that. So you potentially you've worked all your life, and in retirement, you are now literally sat at home, not able to do anything. And just what you said there, Joe, so that was a massive motivation again for me doing this. So I made some financial mistakes. So I realized all of my financial education came from my dad. My dad's 71 and he still has to work. So he sent me to private school and I left, and he obviously had a massive surplus income. what's he been doing with that for the last, since I left? So like all of my financial knowledge came from him, and obviously in hindsight he probably wasn't particularly financial literate himself. And it's an area where I think, unlike probably anything else, so most people are with accountants or legal advice, they'll take their word for it, but for some reason with finance, people would rather trust like their mate at the pub for advice rather than actually going out and finding out the answer themselves, which I find bizarre.
And things, as you say, like compound interest and some of the basic stuff you've talked about today, we ought to be teaching in schools.
Yeah.
Quite frankly. Yeah. It's a life skill and it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
do agree with that.
It's amazing the people who I speak to who have like early 20s and they're looking to buy a house, and they literally know nothing, like don't know what a mortgage is, have no comprehension about like the interest rates, how they can fluctuate, the impact that might have. So how in sixth form in schools there isn't some sort of financial education, I find absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I agree with the compound thing. I'd forgotten about how massive it actually is, especially during obviously lockdown when you've got credit cards and stuff and things like that, and you can see them. But if it was the other way, it'd be even better. But we have a discussion. I had discussions amongst different people. Would you think it's more better to put money into an ISA, tax-free ISA, every year up to its max, or overpay on your mortgage?
Oh, sorry, you broke up in there.
Do you think it's better to put the maximum into an ISA each year, into the financial year, or pay off a mortgage?
So I'd say it's about balance. So that's probably the biggest message I want to get across today. Is about balance. So if you exclusively focus on your mortgage, exclusively on an ISA or a pension, it's not great. What a more balanced approach of making sure that, so for most people, a mortgage is going to be your biggest hurdle to retirement because it's such a big expense. So making sure your mortgage is paid off for your targeted retirement age, but also ensuring that you keep your funds into an ISA so that you still have access to them if you need it, but also your pension where you are locking away that money that you don't have access to, because for a lot of us that's quite important. If you can't touch it, that's probably for the best. So yeah, that balance, again, similar to Matt's question, all about balance and what is right for you and in your circumstances. Because what I found recently with some clients, so financially, it wasn't the right decision to pay off a mortgage purely on a financial basis. They had a big lump sum to do something with. But for them, it allowed her to give up work and go and start her own business, which for her, that was the most important thing to her. So for her, that decision was right to pay off the mortgage because it allowed her lifestyle now to be significantly better. So yeah, it depends is the long-winded answer to that.
It's like that slide you had with the things, with the various things, and we all need to have a rainy day cash fund, as you showed on that slide, and then it's the other things as well.
Yeah,
so you need a balance. Absolutely.
Yeah, so a rainy day cash fund is something that people find incredibly boring financial advice. However, if you have money invested currently, if something had happened and you needed to draw on that, you could have been withdrawing your investment during COVID when it's just massively dropped in value. So it's a terrible time to draw on your investment. So if you had an emergency fund of 3 or 6 months worth of bills, then you've got that to fall back on. So yeah, stuff like an emergency fund, making sure you have appropriate insurance, like they are some of the basics that people overlook and because they think they're boring and unimportant.
Got one more question, sorry. AVCs that you can pay off through an organisation because it's more tax efficient. Are they better than paying off lump sums of your mortgage?
Usually. Again, it depends. However, it depends on the pension scheme. And yeah, if you get any additional benefits with it. So for example, if it's a final salary pension scheme, the answer is probably yes. to pay into that. So yeah, usually maximizing those opportunities is great, especially if you get employer matching. Because again, getting employer matching with a pension, that's literally free money. So, because I see people who, if they contribute in 5% of their income, their employer will also put in 5%. If you don't contribute, the employer doesn't put in anything into your pension, and people opt out of their pension, but they're missing out on free money. So yeah, if your employer's matching it, then yeah, massively worthwhile.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Has anyone else got any questions?
Well, I'd like to ask you something, Nick. Something that was said to me a very long time ago, and that we tend to forget, I think, is that actually your mortgage is very cheap money.
Yes. So that
it's a very cheap way to borrow.
Yeah. So that 2.5% that I've shown there, realistically at the moment, you could have an interest rate that starts with a 1. So the way inflation is at the moment as well. So yeah, it is a cheap way to borrow money. So currently, because of the growth you can get in investments, it makes sense to look towards that area because borrowing is so cheap. Obviously, in the 80s, there was interest rates were up to 15% at one point. So
pay those.
So that would be a different ball game completely, and all of a sudden paying off your mortgage would take priority, and that's where you could potentially look to draw on investments to rectify that. However, hopefully we won't see a situation where interest rates jump that high, certainly not in the near future anyway. So that'll be a scary world.
Okay, brilliant. Matthew?
Yeah, Nick, just want to sort of add something that I'm not sure if you mentioned, but the reason why most people need to invest is, yeah, it's nice getting 6%, but most people don't probably understand why they need to get that. And actually, one of the biggest things that will ravage your 3 or 4 decade retirement is actually the cost of living and the price of inflation that eats in away at your spendable capital. 3 or 4, you imagine what the price of a loaf of bread was 30, 40 years ago to what it is now. You have, a lot of people don't factor that in. They all think that money stays the same level for 30, 40 years. Of course, it doesn't. So actually, the reason you have to be invested is that you need those returns over and above what cash can give you, because at the moment, cash is 0.001% or whatever, if you're lucky. Inflation historically runs at around about 3%, if not a little bit more. So you actually need those 6% returns just to stay level, really, don't you? So it's just, a lot of people sort of forget that when they building their plans, they don't take into account the cost of future living. And of course, it's 3-4 decades is a hell of a long time. So
yeah, massively. Something that I see quite a lot is people who don't understand investments and are scared of it. They will have all of their money sat in a cash account that, like you say, is currently getting probably 0.1 interest at best. And ultimately, the one way that I can absolutely guarantee you'll lose money is by leaving big parts of your wealth in cash, because over time, exactly as Matt just said there, it will decrease in value and its buying power will be reduced enormously.
I dread to think what our economy is going to look like when my generation, at least, is coming to retire, and what the retirement age is, and if they haven't done what they could have done now. It's quite scary.
We don't have final salary pensions around now. Like as Joan was saying earlier, a lot of people that have retired now are, will have worked 30, 40 years for the same company and built up a, entitlement that will give them, 2/3 of their salary or whatever, which they, quite comfortably can live on a nice tax-free cash. We're relying purely on, workplace pensions and your own provision. If you know anyone who's in a workplace pension and they're with a Nest or whatever, they get 30 quid a month that goes into a pension. That isn't gonna, you're not gonna live on that when you get older. So everyone, the whole basis of retirement provision has been put on ourselves, really. And it's like Joanne said, that the state pension may or may not exist in some form in 30, 40 years time. We don't know yet. I mean, its value is still high, but it's not going to be sustainable for forever. So the emphasis is doing our own retirement planning, our own investing, and our own saving. It's, you know, we're not going to rely on the state provision or company provision for that much longer. So
Yeah.
it's getting difficult.
In particular, self-employed, I find people who are self-employed, understandably, are massively focused on growing their business, a complete detriment to their own financial planning, and they don't take it into consideration at all. So the amount of people who are self-employed have got zero provisions. Like, for example, there was a client I've been working with recently. So pre-COVID, he had a business that he thought probably had a sale value of £1.5 million. And that's folded over COVID and is now obviously worth nothing. And that was a massive part of his retirement planning. So yeah, and again, that is about making sure you have balance between reinvesting and growing your business, but don't neglect yourself either.
That's the old thing, isn't it? That's financial dependence, not financial independence, because you're relying on something that you have no control over future value.
Yeah.
To hopefully rely on, you know, to be independent, and you can't do that, can you? So, like, you know, a business can fold overnight. You're in big trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
I was going to say about those final pension salary schemes, I just can't believe they even existed, but they did. I mean, my father-in-law,
Oh, they're unbelievable. Yeah,
he worked at Mars and he stopped at 50, and Tim worked at Pepsi, and he left the final pension salary scheme to go and work at Cadbury's for 4 years, and now he's back at Pepsi. And lost it. And you just think, like, you don't realise how valuable it is. Really don't now. Now you're just thinking, gosh, like, what are you going to do? So it's definitely made me have a rethink this call. I
mean, those final salary schemes, so this is absolutely not for everyone, but for some of those people who transfer their funds out, some of these people who are maybe on like a good income of maybe £30,000 a year, they found that actually the value of that pension is now over £1 million. And some of these people, where it has been appropriate, have transferred money out, and or in some cases advice has been inappropriate, people have transferred out. But they've become a millionaire overnight for someone who's for their whole career had quite a modest income. So the value of those pensions is mind-blowing.
Has anyone else got any more questions?
What's your next exam, Nick?
I'm done. I'm absolutely done, thanks. I'm having a well-earned break from exams, to be honest.
When do you get the results then for the final one?
So I've got it. I'm done. So that's
brilliant.
So I'm now qualified as a fellow of the Professional Finance Society. So I literally can't get any higher qualifications with that in this institute. So thank you.
Good.
Yeah, it's been a grim year getting those done.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's really nice to obviously, I love these expert clinics because it's nice to see the individual that we speak to 2-3 times a month and really see where their knowledge and passion is, and also learn at the same time. So I think it's been absolutely brilliant. I just love these. I really do. And that was really good, Nick, honestly.
Thank you very much. I hope it was useful.
Yeah,
it's great. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, lovely.
All right. We will end Expert in the Circle. Thank you, Mr. Henbrey.
No problems.
I hope you all have a lovely weekend coming up. We are doing another social next week. We're going to, because of the way the weeks fall, because we're only doing this in lockdown, we're going to do another after work social next week and a coffee morning the following week. So we've only got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So we just didn't think having a drink on a Monday or Tuesday night was probably sensible. So, but there will be dates out for that. So last night's was really good for those of you that were there. We're only meant to be on for half an hour and we're on for 90 minutes. And it was just hilarious. I mean, yeah. Anyway, so come and join us for the next one if you didn't come on. Also, we've got Professor Tim Wilson this time next Friday for our Big Circle Forum. As I've heard him speak, he is brilliant. I don't know how many we've got registered, actually. I need to check. And Rosie gets all the invites. But we've set up an event on LinkedIn. So if you could just go on and invite any guests that you think might want to come and network, any guests that you want to network with, all you have to do is click the invite button. It is the most simplest thing, or share the event, because if we've got a busy club on that meeting and people are seeing we've got loads of guests in the room, one, because I talk about quite a lot of you in those forums, they're going to hear about you. And when you go out in breakout rooms, you get to meet people. And obviously after social media, it's good as well. So if you could go on and invite people, would really, really appreciate that. And then obviously, just to let you know as well, we've got a bonus expert clinic, which is going to be, I think, on, no, sorry, let me recorrect myself, a bonus